Okay, I think, why don't you guys just come in and sit down. We're going to do this entirely from the table today. But I am delighted to welcome our second guest to this class, Barbara Lynch. Barbara... As many of you may know, Barbara is one of the country's most acclaimed chefs and entrepreneurs. Her Barbara Lynch Gruppo consists of some of the city's very best restaurants, Number 9 Park, B&G Oysters, Drink, Sportello, Stir, and the newest one, I think, Menton. She has earned acclaim for both her wonderful cooking and her innovative business acumen. Barbara Lynch won praise both locally and nationally. In 2003, the James Beard Foundation named her Best Chef Northeast, and Travel and Leisure proclaimed Number 9 Park one of the top 50 restaurants in America. For 2 consecutive years, Number 9 Park was named Best Restaurant General Excellence by Boston Magazine, and Gourmet included it as one of America's top 50 restaurants in 2006. In 2007, Boston Magazine named Barbara Best Chef. Please join me in welcoming Barbara Lynch.
Thank you, Professor Thrush.
Pleasure.
Thank you guys for being here. How many of you like to cook? Awesome. How many of you know how to cook? Even better. Professor asked me to just go over my story a little bit. When I was your age, I didn't know how to cook, actually. But I do want to say that I've always loved design, and I'm fascinated by architecture. And I just think it has a big part in our life in general, how we live, how we move, how we eat, what's entertainment. So before we do go into the question and answer, let me just start. I'm a Bostonian. I was born and raised in South Boston. One of 7 kids. My father died a month before I was born. And if anybody, years ago, even if a psychic told me that I was going to be running a $24 million company, I'd say, yeah, bullshit. Especially running Menton, a restaurant like Menton in Boston. Anybody been to my restaurants? Awesome. Drink? Have you been there?
Well, that's a sensitive question.
So I grew up in South Boston. I actually went to school at Madison Park High, which is right near Dudley Station, and I hated school. I really, I just didn't like it. I hooked class every day and hung out here at Northeastern. So I just didn't have a grasp for academics, really. But I did have one lucky chance in life where I had a great home ec class in high school. So I was only supposed to take that for 1 year. My teacher saw some hope and promise in me, so she asked if I could stay for 4 years, and that would keep me in school. So that's what I did. But I still never graduated. I was actually a young entrepreneur in high school as well. I was a bookie. And I made a lot of money then, and I decided that luck isn't going to last, so I might as well continue to stay on this path of cooking. Very reckless, so don't try that one. Anyway, Boston was in a really chaotic time back then because it was forced busing. I don't know if many of you understand it or know the history of Boston, but at one point it was mandatory that South Boston, instead of going to South Boston High, you were going to be shipped over to Madison Park High with folks from East Boston and Charlestown. And anyone who lived in Roxbury was shipped over to South Boston and Charlestown. So it was really like a war zone in school. And the one thing that I actually loved was cooking. They had a great home ec class where 1 week you're cooking, the following week you're serving faculty members. And I hated the serving part, and I really loved the cooking part. Also, I worked part-time at a private club called St. Botolph Club in Boston. My mother worked there, a lot of our friends worked there. And it was just amazing to me that like you can make people happy by cooking. And that's what I wanted to do. Now it's in my head that wow, you know, this guy is serving Dover sole. Shit I knew nothing about. I knew nothing. I never cooked there. I just waited on tables. But the feeling of that room and the feeling of making people happy by cooking, he was just amazing. So getting a glimpse of that world made me hungry for more. Later on, I worked in other restaurants, which Professor and I were talking about. I worked for one chef for about 8 years, who was extremely talented, young. I learned a lot from him, and I learned a lot of what not to do. So there comes a time when you stop learning, and I decided to become my own chef, an executive chef for a restaurant. And that was pretty good. It was my first time actually having a staff of like 28 cooks, turning a restaurant from a failure to a success. Quite amazing for such a young cook. And then the owner was a little greedy and wanted a lower food cost and so forth. So I felt, okay, warning signs, wrong chef. You know, I was just starting my career and food cost was fine for the size of the operation, et cetera, et cetera. So I just walked out. And my wine director walked out the same day. And she still works with me, by the way. She's we're together 25 years now. I also worked on a boat in Martha's Vineyard. I lied my whole way through this interview because they wanted, you know, I just went through the want ads and I said, oh, I'm going for that job as a cook. And automatically, the owner of this boat thought I wanted to be a host or a server. And I said, no, I want to cook. And he said, well, do you know how to cook? And I said, oh, yeah, I'm making quahog chowder, zabayon sauce, et cetera, et cetera. I just lied my whole way through, but I got the job. And 2 days before I got that job, the chef quit. And they asked me if I could do it. And I said, absolutely. So that was really like my first start at, holy shit, you can actually cook and people like this food? It got rave reviews, the news, Entertainment Tonight was on there, Carly Simon. So it was just amazing to me that, you know, you can actually do something. And I didn't go to school, but back then I couldn't afford cooking school either. So when I took that job, I locked myself in my bedroom and I went to the library. I got every book I could get on cooking and basically taught myself. So that job lasted about a year and a half, and then I decided to come back to Boston. And I did work in a few restaurants before I met the one chef I worked with. And throughout all of those experiences, I really learned a lot by the seat of my pants. I mean, one restaurant was in Harvard Square, and I lived at Andrews Square, so I would read Foods of Italy by Waverly Root back and forth just to try to catch up. There was one other job I had with two Italian women in the theater district, and that restaurant was amazing. Another restaurant that wasn't successful, it was successful for lunch, but dinner was awful. And so I joined them and made it a success, and that's where I started to get all my accolades, like Best Chef Northeast, Boston Magazine Best Chef, et cetera, et cetera. And then I decided, okay, I'm not learning anymore here. It's a good time to take this award and run with it. Now, I really wasn't ready. Basically, I had no business training, no academic training. I owed the IRS a shitload of money. I lived with my mother, still in the housing projects. But you know what? I went with my gut feeling to know what I want. Like, I knew I wanted to cook the food I wanted to cook. I knew the plate I wanted it on. I knew how I wanted the room to feel. And I had this feeling of, I know what my customers want. And so that's when Number 9 started, 1998. So we're going to come up on our 15 years, which is really unheard of in the restaurant industry. To be successful for 15 years and doing better numbers than we did 15 years ago. Without adding more seats, it's just incredible. And then 6 years ago, well, actually, after number 9, 5 years after that, I started to get restless. I had an incredible team, and I felt like, oh my God, if I don't expand, I'm going to lose my team, which maybe wasn't the greatest way to think, but that's what I had in my head at the time. And I looked around Boston, and I found 2 empty corner spots, actually on Tremont Street in the South End. And I couldn't believe that they were empty and a real estate company hadn't got onto both corners, which I just think is crazy. So that's when I opened up the butcher shop, B&G Oysters. So one is all fish across the street, and that one's all meat. People thought I was just absolutely nuts with the butcher shop, because who puts a meat case in the middle of the room, and what do you do here? You know, do you buy meat, or do you drink wine? And you do both. There's a bandsaw going on all day. It was kind of brand new for butchering, or the butcher world, especially to have a female butcher. Basically, I didn't know how to butcher either, so I taught myself how to do that. So that is like now 9 years old, and B&G is 9 years old. I opened up a little produce store right next to that. We can go back to that later, because that I loved, but it didn't last. It's one of the concepts I had, and it just wasn't a success. I didn't do my homework, but I absolutely loved it there. Next to that, I opened a cooking school, demonstration kitchen, Stir, and that is going on its 6th year, and that is amazing. 300 square feet of pure money-making machine. Didn't start that way. How that concept started was actually, I had just signed on to a space down in 4 Point Channel, 3 restaurants. I've expanded so quickly, I didn't have a kitchen to cook in. So I figured I could put the same kitchen I have at home in this little spot, and also sell cookbooks. So I was making no money on cookbooks, so I decided to practice recipes for the new restaurant, and then just started to teach classes, and it's highly successful now. So after I opened up Stir, I got approached by this company, Berkeley Investments, and was showing me down by the 4 Point Channel area. Do you know where that is? Where the ICA is and all that? So it's been desolate for over 35 years. I grew up around there, like 5 minutes from there. My mother would always walk me to Downtown Crossing and would cut through A Street and Congress. So when this gentleman approached me, I said, oh shit, I'm in trouble, because if it's the building I think it is, then I'm screwed. I'm going to do something. And lo and behold, it was the building. The hair on my arms went up, and I was like, oh my God, it's the old Boston Costume Building, where I used to go to parties and just always dreamt of having something down there. He said, do you want 2,000 square feet or 3,000 square feet? And I just did the typical Lynch thing. Well, how big is this? And he said, 15,000. And I said, I'll take all of that. And he said, oh, okay. And then I knew immediately what I wanted. I wanted a casual restaurant to be the heartbeat of that area, which is Italian. I wanted a cocktail bar that wasn't so hard to find, and a speakeasy, because I guess that was the trend these days. So I opened Drink, which is I think it's 40 seats. There's no bottles in the back. There's no lists of cocktails, because I just didn't feel like endorsing companies that I have to buy from. Why should I have to endorse the bottle? For me, it's just a personal thing. It's like wearing Prada with a name. I just can't do it. And I also felt like every time I went out and ordered a glass of wine or something, I'd say, what kind of wines do you have by the glass? And the server would just go, oh, we have a list, which means I'm not having a drink here, because you can't turn me on to anything that I haven't had. And that's exactly what I wanted drink to be. You know, let's turn you on to some beautiful rye, or these great whiskeys, or these local vodka, et cetera, et cetera. And they are amazing down at Drink. They're just crazy in their own world and very creative. Then I knew I wanted to open up Monton, which is my fine dining restaurant, finer than Number 9. Boston, I felt needed that because we had just lost the Ritz-Carlton, we'd lost the Bostonian, we'd lost Maison Robert, so my chances are pretty good about having fine dining. And also, everyone else was opening up bistros or calling them bistros, but charging a lot of money in a shitly poor design building and dropping $200 for a bistro just wasn't my cup of tea, especially if I'm not in Paris. So I'm going to go one step further. I'm going to open up fine dining, and I'm going to shoot for Relais and Chateau. Relais and Chateau is sort of the prestige I wanted because it puts you on the national map. And Boston has never had a Relais and Chateau property. So I got it. And I'm the only woman in North America to have a Relais and Chateau property, and I'm one of only 6 in the world, which is kind of fun. And now here I am. And so Monton's been open 3.5 years. Mm-hmm. And I opened it in a shitty economy. Basically, the recession just started, and I have such a great team that would not change my vision for the world. Nope, she wants this, we're going to do it. We did put it off for 6 or 8 months, but that was okay because it was like giving birth to triplets, so it gave me a little more time to adjust. And it's actually, it was kind of brilliant. It's the back kitchen is like a hotel kitchen. So there's a huge kitchen, we have a fish room, a meat room, everything has a home. So it's kind of like a hotel kitchen, but it's not a hotel. So there's 3 different entrances. Oh. And I only had to get 1 liquor license for all 3. Oh. I don't serve liquor at Sportello, although I could, and I might eventually, now that the area is picking up. So it is time to sort of change Sportello, but we can talk about that if you want in your question and answer.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Sure. Okay, the first thing that we should get clear is, though technically on my personnel file it says professor, you should call me George.
Okay. George.
Second, your collection of restaurants is so unique. I wonder, I mean, this is kind of a 30,000-foot question, and I know you did it incrementally, but did you have a sense when you started that you wanted to have more than 1 restaurant? That this was,
No. I mean, honestly, I didn't think, I'm still in awe that I'm here, or this far along in my career. I always thought I'd have a steak tip joint or a sub shop, because where I grew up, there's one on every corner, and there's a bar on every corner. Right. So no, I never knew. So, but this change of expectations, or the opening up of the possibility of this other kind of success, did it happen in this home economics class? No. So this is, I think, important for you all. It was nostalgic, actually. The Number 9 was just, okay, I'm going to open my first restaurant. And back then, 15, 16 years ago, what I imagined was my first trip to Paris, eating in 2 Michelin star restaurants. And, I had tons of memories, great meals. And so that's kind of what I wanted with Number 9. And it became that. Then the butcher shop was actually, I went back further to my first time I ever went to Italy. I had no job, I had a 0 job, I had friend's credit card, I had nothing. But the experience that I had in Italy was amazing, that I could go up to this little bodega and get my meat, wine, cigarettes, shots of Santo, and chat with the locals. And so that memory of, and go to a wild boar butchering after it was hunted that day. So it was that's what I wanted, but of course tamed a little bit. But literally we have a bandsaw right in the middle of the room, and we could butcher whole animals if they were shipped to me that way, but they're not. That doesn't happen anymore. It all comes in pieces. So that's where that started. And the oyster bar came across to me as growing up in Southie, my mother used to take me to get fried clams and oysters. Well, never oysters, but fried clams and fried calamari at a place called Kelly's in South Boston. And then as I was in my young teens or early 20s, my late teens, early 20s, I would go to the North Shore to go and have oysters because Boston had shitty oyster joints. Although I did work once at Bell in Hand right next to Durgan Park in Faneuil Hall, and it was amazing that they had one shucker in a basement under a light. His name was Bubba, and he would pop oysters for all the restaurants. So they were pre-popped, which were awful. And so I felt like a New Englander. Once April comes, I really want minerality. I want great oysters. I want great wine. And that's what I did. And then Stir is actually the same exact layout as my kitchen at home because I have such ADD that I need to know where everything is. Then the 3 restaurants, I always wanted a cocktail bar. Drink came out a lot nicer than I could ever imagine. Sportello is basically my memory of working at Brigham's on Park Street. So the counter service is basically that same formula, but we serve pasta, and the bakery part is like the sweet part of Brigham's. And then Monton is just probably my memories of cooking in Courchevel or in Paris and working on these incredible Moltini suites, a brigade system. Also, in my mind, I felt like Monton was going to be my last, dream of concepts because it's kind of like, it's like coming up with, not an opera, but it's just, I don't have another one in me. And I have everything that I want and everything that I love, I have right here in Boston now.
But now, how is it different? This is, I think, it's so interesting in this class where I think these folks are this is just the second visit out of like 22 or 24. And what I think we will glean from this, and it's really interesting, is kind of, we have people here because they've done it. They have like designed something incredible. And we want to work our way back. And you've been telling us some of the engines that were behind this. Like one of my questions before you started talking was going to be, what in the world is the deal that you already addressed about the butcher shop on one corner and B&G Oysters on the other? These are completely atypical restaurants in every respect. They're not, like, I cannot imagine I can't imagine a restaurant group saying, yeah, this is a good idea. This is what we should do.
Oh, no, they hate.
And so, like, maybe you could share, like, how. See, these folks haven't started a restaurant.
Oh.
They like, what would a, let's say an average, but often overpriced Boston restaurant that, and you don't have to use names, of course, but how is it different the way other restaurants kind of get conceived and executed, especially by a group? Because an individual person might have their individual passion restaurant. They have just the one, and it might be idiosyncratic. But once you have a group, it seems to me they start falling into very similar themes, no? Yeah.
So I would say that 9 Park was going to be that would be my individual restaurant. But I got restless, and the beauty of number 9 was that I got rave reviews, and it was a success right away. So I'm the visionary, and people believed in me. And to build a team, you have to be consistent. They got paid. They made great tips. I was consistent with the food and the service, so it wasn't a headache to go to work. It wasn't like, table 54 said this sucks or something like that. I mean, that's like incredible, right? So I held on to my team, and I actually liked, and the fact that I didn't know much about the business. I couldn't even read a P&L back then, but that's not where I was. I was the chef. I was the one who was creative, coming up with the dishes. I knew a dining room like nobody's business. I know it takes you 7 minutes to eat. And so, you know, number 9 was a doable restaurant for me. It's 60 seats. And that was doable for me. I would never open up something that I could not handle or I wouldn't feel comfortable with. But, you know, 60 seats, your 5th year in, and the world is changing. You know, you're not going to make any money if you're one chef in one restaurant. I don't own the restaurant. I lease it. And so I wanted to have more. And now I've got this bite of, shit, what are we missing in Boston? And you get that, like, I get that, like, high on creating things. So, yeah.
So, well, and that maybe goes a ways to explaining why your restaurants seem to be more explicitly conceptual. And we use the word concept all the time, like the concept car, right? But we aren't always clear.
I hated that word concept forever.
But we aren't always clear what the concept is. In other words, like with drink, let's just talk about drink for a second. It is a really interesting bar, and you've cited some of the like key things. Wait a minute, there's no liquor bottles behind the bar, so it suddenly it feels different right away.
I pissed every liquor company off, by the way, because, you know, when they can bring clients into the bar, oh yeah, we have this. Oh my God, we have Patron, we have this. I don't care.
Right.
You're still getting paid. Like, I'm still spending $80,000 on your shit.
Right.
And how much you come to my bar and drink twice? And you want me to, no, just those numbers
want me to turn it
working.
into an ad for you.
Right.
Well, what's so interesting is, of course, what gets foregrounded. I mean, like, what is the takeaway in a way? And the takeaway at drink for me is that you have an incredibly intimate relationship with the person making your drinks. There's
3 pods.
Yeah, I mean, they've maximized the linear amount of bar.
No televisions.
Yeah, that's it.
So I wanted 3, I wanted 6 corners so you could actually see who's in and who's out. There's no mirrors. There's no television. It's just very sleek, and you can actually see who's in this bar at all times. If you want to have a conversation, you know, it's kind of fun. I mean, I really don't like to go out to eat and look at a television, or I hate to sit at a bar and like just look at a television.
No, actually, it's one of my. Well, I wrote a piece for Boston Magazine last year about how appalling it is that, look, it's fine if you're at an airport restaurant and CNN is telling you about what bad weather in Denver. Okay, I can understand that. Or you go to a sports bar and sports is on. Of course, fine. You went in there with that understanding. But when you go to a really, really nice restaurant and you go and you're waiting for the table and you realize it's the same high def. It's like because we can get high def televisions now, we should just put them everywhere. Anyway, that's a
or they think they're going to, you know, attract more. Yeah. So the masses. And I've never been that person. I've never been the masses. And I think it's really hard to be creative and successful, because you can't be off the charts and think that you're going to be successful. But you can think out of the box, but you have to come down a little bit to be in the masses. So what I'm trying to say is you can't go crazy. Right. And I think with the concepts, they were new enough, but not shocking.
Right.
I have to say the butcher shop took a while for Bostonians to understand. That's okay. But once they understood it, man, it's like a cult, okay? So people love it. They go there. They order meats to go. They order meats to be delivered, et cetera. So, you know, it's everything that I imagined, that I'm butchering meat at Christmas time or Thanksgiving, getting turkeys ready for people. But I've seen the same customers for 7 years, their kids growing up. Right. It's like that little, what I envisioned of like me sometimes going to the North End, but I never knew my butcher. Mm-hmm. So that to me was a success. I will continue to make that a success. I will hire the right people to run it, the right people to carry out the vision. And that's exactly what I've done with Drink.
Now, you know, somebody hearing you speak so passionately about these things could easily imagine, oh, well, you know, she's passionate about this, but if you want to be financially successful, you would do it differently. But these things have been very successful.
That. I mean, really, who puts that? Like, to be financially successful, I'm not going to follow somebody else's rules. I'm not going to follow, you might have to, I don't know about architecture as much as I, you know, but I'm not going to follow something that I won't understand. And you have to take risks, and you have to believe in, I'm telling you, a vision. But, you know, and then it's like you're selling bullshit in a way, so you have to explain it to investors, you have to explain it to your team, and they have to believe you. And then that vision comes to life. But I'm lucky that they're all in Boston. I'm lucky that I'm still involved with all of them, that I know everybody in the company. Another odd thing for our restaurant group is the staff never really leaves. So, and it's funny because if they do leave, they just come back. They come back. So I just hired a new person last night, and he was a server, started at number 9 and knew nothing. He was a captain at Monton, fell in love, went over to B&G to be closer to the girl, and then moved to New York City and worked at Gramercy Tavern and was a general manager there. I mean, this kid knew nothing. So not only are we a consistent restaurant group, we teach so much, like wine words, food, knowledge. It's just incredible. You couldn't pay for what you get. Plus, you're getting paid to learn. So it's kind of interesting.
This is great. You know, it is, I think, counterintuitive for people who you know, when we go to a restaurant or any kind of extraordinary experience. And I you know, the reason I think restaurants are such a great thing to talk about is because they are fundamentally an experience. Eating is a part of it. It's a big part of it, but it's certainly not the whole thing. I mean, you have to think about, we were talking about Jeffrey and Cheryl Katz and how they've designed these interiors that are really simpatico with your intentions, it seems.
They're also not restaurant designers. They're actual retail and interior designers. Her husband's an architect. But I knew them before I opened up number 9 because they used to come and eat at Michaela's in Cambridge. And they loved the food. And then as I got to know them, I went to their house, and I loved the house. It wasn't like, oh my God, you can't sit on the couch. You know, it was like her son's cargo pants were hung up on the wall, torn, but she just used it as a display as going up the stairs, and there's a note from Oliver saying, Mom, what can you do with these, right? So I felt like, wow, they're really normal. They're amazing designers. They've got so much talent, but you go into their house, and they're normal. So I wanted the restaurants to be normal, not over-designed ceilings, colors. It has to be a good marriage because the wine has to pair with the food, the service has to pair with, you know, just the hospitality. All has to be on equal playing fields. Nobody is better than anybody. And we run into that sometimes with the bar at number 9 because it's such a great place, cocktail bar. And in the beginning they were like thinking they were high and mighty, and you just fucking put it out. You put the fire out, and we're all one in this restaurant or in this group, and that has stuck for 15 years.
Well, you know, that sounds really similar to what people who talk about a much more, let's say, complicated enterprise like, and I don't know if you'll appreciate the comparison, but, you know, when the people at Starbucks talk about how to design the experience you have going into a Starbucks, and they've got, you know, 10,000 of them or however many of them, maybe
more
than
Starbucks?
that. You know, that's not relevant to this point.
I hate Starbucks.
But what they're good at, and the reason they are so successful, is at a mass scale. They've been thoughtful. Things don't just happen. You know, you go to a lot of, especially once things go to scale. Once you start having a bunch of stores or a bunch of anything, then it's much harder to treat it like your baby, of course, because you know when you design your first thing, you can be super involved. And it sounds like one of the secrets to this ongoing success in your group is that you remain quite involved in all of them, and so that your, you know, set of skills is present, whether you're physically at B&G when I go there or at the butcher shop when I go there. By the way, I go to most of these restaurants.
Yeah, but it takes years to build that team. And also, you have to grow in order to create this team. So there were a few things. How large did I have to get to the HR world? Like, you know, you don't make a shitload of money in independent restaurants. It's not like, again, I don't have 220 seats. I'm not making $14 million a year, what a steak joint will do just by selling steak and baked potatoes. It's just a lot more complicated than that. And I'm not union driven at all. Right. So when you go to a hotel, it's unions. And so these, you know, the people who work for me, some of them went to culinary school and some didn't. Some went to Harvard, some went to MIT. They're out in the front. Actually, my chef at Number 9 dropped out of Harvard and never knew how to cook. Now he's our chef de cuisine at Number 9. So where was I? To build the teams. Oh, so when I have an executive chef who oversees all of the restaurant chefs. So he's the executive chef that works closely with me, who gives directions to all the chef de cuisines. And I'm lucky because I'm French and Italian, so I don't really veer off into other worlds of food. So that, you know, you can always tell that they might be one of my restaurants, but you're really not sure until you look at something and says, oh my God, these are all hers? So that's the other thing I wanted, is that I didn't want to be like, like Charlie's. You know, I like him, but I don't want to be like Charlie's Eating, Drinking Saloon. Thank God it's Fridays. You know, it's a chain, and it feels like a chain. So that was my main goal, was not to be a chain. And then I did get to the HR. I had to get over 110 employees. And so I went back into the resumes of some of the servers I had, and lo and behold, one of them was quitting because she's going to have a family. And I asked her if she'd be in HR, which was this great move because she knew the front of the house. She knew the business. She's also worked for me for 6 years. And so now I have 285 employees. I started with 32, and she's still my HR girl. So yeah, I mean, if you build and you're consistent and you're challenging and creative, these people stay. They're waiting for the next thing, you know. But
let me put a hypothetical out there for you. Well, if you were going to do another new restaurant, let's just speculate. Where do you start? Do you start with an idea like drink? Do you start with a location? It sounded like in that setting there was a bit of a location-driven enterprise. But do you start with an idea? Do you start with a location? Do you start with a cuisine? Do you start with a demographic?
Nothing, none of that. I'm so stupid. I'll ride by and I'll go, oh, look at that building. It's so fucking cute. That would be like, oh my God, that would just be the perfect, you know, roast chicken restaurant. Like, you know, but it's what the old building looked like. And like all of a sudden your imagination is like, oh my God, that is amazing. Like I would totally do that. Like before Drink was Drink, the building next to it, there was this old boiler room that was attached to another warehouse building, which is now Marriott Courtyard. But I wasn't even interested in the brick, the whole like building. All I wanted was that boiler room, which was actually huge, 3,000 square feet, 15 feet high. And I was going to put drink in there, call it the Boiler Bar. But they didn't want to sell me just that part. They wanted the whole building to get sold. And I was like, okay, we'll put that one behind. But again, it's like riding by someplace and seeing it. You can tell if something has soul or not. And I think that I'm seeing a lot of that in Cambridge right now with a couple of young chefs and restaurants that have popped up. They didn't go for the demographics. They didn't have a formula. They just felt like this is going to be a perfect spot. So no, I didn't. And I've been lucky, I have to say, knock on wood. But especially with the South End restaurants, because I was early there as well. There was only 2 restaurants in that area. But then I'm on Tremont and Waltham, and at the end is Washington Street. And right after I opened, Washington Street started to come alive, more condominiums. Tremont Street got a theater, and then another condo complex. So I was like, yes,
Atelier 505.
I'm not going down. I'm only going up. And then lo and behold, like, of course, later on, I'm like, oh my God, I'm making these developers so much money.
Right,
Like,
right. Without you
Waltham,
there.
I'm not getting paid for this.
Right.
But Waltham Street became the best street in Boston to live on because of Butcher Shop, B&G, Stir, and then, Washington Street, you have Formaggio's Kitchen. So in a way you build and people will come and they'll follow. Right. But I got the biggest shit for going down to 4-Point Channel. I was sort of the pioneer down there. And every month there's another one opening, another restaurant, and another restaurant. But I don't care. It's almost like if I had one restaurant, if I only opened Sportello, I'd be gone by now. So with such massive amount of empty space, I knew you're gonna have to create a world. And there's a funny thing too, I always do 3 things at the same time. So I don't know why yet, but maybe I'll find out why.
Okay, well, I'm going to ask you a question in a second about starting a restaurant on a vacant lot, but I'm not going to ask you that first. Okay. Because it seems like your decisions are very, or your attractions are very, very space-driven. But I wanted to talk, you talked about some of the ventures that you've started that didn't work. A lot of people, a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of creative people talk about the importance of failing at something on your way to. Yeah. I mean, you've talked a lot about the things you learned being successful, about managing people, about making sure that you kept and made it attractive for good people to be with you because it's essential. But talk to us about things that didn't work.
So Plum, okay. It was too pretty. The 2 beautiful windows, one would just be like displayed with beautiful pumpkins, the other one would be just gorgeous, like porcini mushrooms. So the idea was that I could show the public what we use in the restaurants from all our local farmers or, et cetera. Just amazing produce. Mistake was too pretty, too clinique-y. Second mistake was I didn't know the produce business at all. So whatever I purchased, I couldn't sell back to myself. And I also didn't do my homework on the demographic part because really they're just young urban folks that are moving in and they only cook on the weekends. So they don't have a family to cook for. So if I was in Wellesley or Weston or Newton, I'd be a success because I'd have the butcher shop, you could get your meat, you could get your produce. And also I was competing against Whole Foods, who's just like, was on every corner of Boston. So that was my mistake. Always hard to let something go, but I was losing money. I mean, it was cheaper to leave it empty because the rent was so cheap, cheaper than paying staff. So we used it as storage for a while. And then now I rent it to my friends who own Sienna Farms, who no produce. But and it's
Is
so
it in the
nice.
South End?
Yeah, it's right in between Butcher and Stir. It's so nice to have it open because now like all 3 are like, it's bustling. And that was the sad part, was just having an empty space for 2 years. So the failure part is knowing, I'm starting to really understand the shit I don't know. If I don't know produce, I shouldn't have done it. And I'm kind of having this feeling with Sportello as well, now that more people are coming. So the bakery part is, I'm just losing my shit. I'm losing money, So do I shut the bakery? Because I don't know bakery business. I do know you have to sell a lot of bread, which means you have to become wholesale, which we don't even want to do that. So, when you're throwing out muffins and scones and breads and making sandwiches, don't underestimate sandwiches. It's really hard to do and have a restaurant at the same time. Also, you can't have your manager run restaurant, which they're used to running restaurants and people in seats, not people waiting in line for takeout. So 2 different operations in one, it just doesn't work for me anymore. So now I know. That's why I liked fish, meat, cooking class school. I love drink, it's what you do. I love Monton. It's just fancy and it's not changing. Sportello is my last one that I really need to tweak, so I'm probably gonna might have to take out the bakery, but oh well. It's not like when I first opened, there was no one down there.
Right.
Now there's Flower Bakery, there's this, there's that, so there's plenty of options. And we're on the second floor, so who wants to go upstairs for a cup of coffee? Although we do have really good coffee and coconut cake and shit like that, but it's just, it's not worth it. You know, if I just got rid of the bakery right away, I saved $45,000 in staff, labor that, you know, I mean, I can make $387,000 a month and make $50 profit, and that's pretty sad. So that's when you know, all right, time to change.
Right.
And it's not like where we want to close and fire and get rid of 10 employees. We'll try to put them somewhere else. I mean, we always need people. So, you know, I'm just saying we gave it our best shot, and now it's so much fun because we get to design something different.
Right. Okay, now the question. I have a hypothetical vacant lot in a cool part of Cambridge. Are you going to start a restaurant there?
No. I don't
Why
think...
not? It's a cool place. There's hipsters around who will want to go to your restaurant.
Done.
What caused the no? Was it the hipsters? Was it Cambridge?
It's just restaurants in general, but not to say that I wouldn't look at a space like that and say, ooh, maybe I'd put an innovation. No, maybe I'd put like a food lab there where, you know, all these young chefs or people who are making food at home, like jams, jellies, cookies, protein bars, like have a kitchen that can actually make and process that food, and then, you know, it has a science lab where you send it off and it gets tested, pH balanced, and then out front you get to sell all the local stuff that's being made. Because I personally hate having to go to Whole Foods. I just hate it. It's just so much going on. They change shelves all the time. And I find that with Starbucks, it's like, oh my God, like it started out as just like coffee and venti and whatever. And now it's like soy, less foam.
No, I know.
Like, I just can't take it. So
There are few things in life that are easier to make fun of than Starbucks.
I always think it's less is more.
Right.
And I hope we get to see more of that. Like, what is the actual, what is it? What's the theme? Less is more. I don't know. I like that. It works for me.
Well, it's interesting, and you know, there are so many ventures in this country that have tried to leverage people's experiences in Italy. And of course, Starbucks is one of those. It's just that it's traveled so far from what instigated it. You know, the idea of going to a stand-up bar and getting a really good cup of espresso.
Which is really intimidating if you don't speak Italian and you don't feel like you're from the village or the neighborhood. I feel like I used to be intimidated doing that, but I'd get used to it.
Right.
And this coffee, San Francisco, anybody go to San Francisco? People wait 45 minutes for a cup of coffee, believe it or not, at like Stumptown Coffee, or it's just crazy. I don't know if I would wait 45
No,
minutes.
I know.
But
the fetishization of coffee has maybe
I just
gone
think
too
if
far.
Starbucks pulled some of their shit out, they would be a lot better. Like the smoothies, the frappe things. And
Yeah, except, you know, I don't know what their profit and loss sheet looks like or what their balance sheet looks like, but
I'm sure
I'd be surprised.
I'm sure they don't lose any money.
Well, I mean, the reason they have those things is that they charge people, they can charge people even more for those crazy things than they can. They've probably come close to maxing out on what they can charge you for an actual, just regular cup of coffee.
Also, for the shit you're putting in your body, the sugar, the cream, it's just, and like the syrups, it's just all bad.
No,
sugar.
I know. That's on the record. It's all bad. Lest there be any confusion about whether it's a little bit bad or
No, I love coffee, but I just can't do it.
Okay, I want to, as we're going to start to circle around to some of the questions that we've been asking people, and we will be asking people throughout the semester. There are sort of 8 words that we keep going back to, and I think, you know, some are more and less relevant based on what the person does. But, you know, one of them, for example, is iteration, the idea of doing multiple versions of something. And I think that you're talking about the successful restaurants, the problems with Plum, is an exercise in that, although I imagine when you're actually just making the menus of the restaurants, you must go through a lot of iteration. I mean, when you start any of these restaurants, do they have the same menu today that they had when they started?
No. No.
Is it just kind of like a testing of what people like? And
No, it's called inspiration, evolution. It's like if I put the beet salad on, my customers at number 9 were so mad. I took that off. I took the crispy duck off. When I took the bolognese off, they were actually
violent.
They were like, I'm not coming back. And there's 2 ways to think about it. If I kept those on, it's like Aretha Franklin. You'd hear the same songs over and over and over again. So you have to change with the times, what people's making. Also, you want to be creative enough and to teach young cooks new things. And so you have to just play around. I didn't invent food, so I don't need to reinvent anything. I just need to inspire them to use seasonal products and then to use some new techniques, but don't go crazy on that molecular stuff. But enough to keep them involved and to teach them. And then once they feel like they're done and they're not learning, then they know. They'll leave.
In this vein, Steve Jobs famously said when he was asked, well, do you do market research to find out what people want? He said, no, how do they know what they want? I haven't told them yet.
That's good. I should read that book.
That's a pretty useful line.
People really don't know what they want. That's the other thing. They don't know what they want. And then you show them something and they're like, oh my God, this makes so much sense. Why wasn't this done before? Also, all the restaurants I have, it's kind of important to me that when you walk in the door, it already feels like it's been there. It's established. There's nothing new and trendy. And what they call it in the restaurant, flash in the pan, which means you'll have a 10-year lifespan. Never did that. It has to sort of feel real. And you got to go for that real, raw, like who you are, kind of. And choose a mentor and who you want to be, because you'll change. Every 7 years, you'll change, you'll grow, you'll learn so much, and then you're off to the next thing, and then you're off to the next thing. So, whether you build buildings or train stations or barges or whatever, you'll be different.
Right. We talked about, we've actually also sort of talked about context, because so many of your restaurants are in the South End, and so that even if it wasn't an explicit intention after you get started, there's a reciprocal relationship between these ventures of yours and the neighborhood that was emerging, right? You got there before Atelier 505, you got there before a lot of things.
Important thing was to also, you open up and everyone's excited, and your staff, your servers are basically your salespeople, and they would come in and say, well, so-and-so's been living in the South End forever. Can I just sit? And I said, no, I'm not a South End restaurant. I'm B&G Oysters, which happens to be located in the South End of Boston on Tremont Street. You would never, that's like being prison to the South End. You can't depend on that. You cannot depend on the neighborhood. They leave. Beacon Hill, like after their kids are gone off to college, they actually move out of those big houses and they move down to the South End. And so you never want to say, I'm a Beacon Hill restaurant. You're not. I'm restaurants that happen to be in Boston. I've got every little section covered, but, I'm still a Boston restaurateur.
Another word that we've talked about a lot, and you have to understand, we've got people who do all kinds of things, so some of these. But one of the things that some of the people who do experience design, who do things like design Apple stores, or they design, they design for airlines. Airlines are really interesting because they try to, first of all, they try not to be treated like a commodity, even though we think of them that way.
Right.
They want your experience on Virgin to be really different from what it is on all the others, and therefore they try to find those moments in the experience where they can differentiate themselves.
I love Virgin.
Yeah, well, they really try. I mean, not everything they do is perfect, but they make an effort to add value and be interesting.
Everywhere they put their, like especially Logan, you just get off at Virgin, you walk in.
It's okay.
You drop your bags off, and then you get into the little Virgin section. It's small in Boston. The one in San Francisco has like a 4,000 square feet space, like a healthy restaurant, but Virgin never got canceled. You know, it's just kind of crazy.
Right.
They're good. I like Virgin.
Yeah, well, they are. Well, the point is they pay attention to the experience. And I think one of the key words that people who pay attention to the experience talk about is empathy. That is really putting yourself in the shoes of your customer or the audience or whoever it may be, given what you do. That is not just sort of thinking about what makes a great airline from an airline owner's perspective, like really cool planes or tail designs that we think look really great. No, it's when I get out of the cab and it's raining and I gotta make my flight. You know, how smooth is that?
Hospitality.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all hospitality, and our world it actually runs on hospitality, which you can sense now. You really don't get that. I love that commercial when the guy goes into the bank and the chain's too small.
Right.
And he's trying to sign something, and you know he's talking to a computer lady, and it's like, oh my God, you know.
That is what it is.
It's frustrating. I was just telling George that I was trying to sign up for a class online, and it's so fucking frustrating. Like if I'm trying to do it from my iPad or my laptop, and I just couldn't figure it out. And I was like, oh my God, this is just crazy, because I didn't want to put any more money into it, because I couldn't download the audio parts of it. And I was like, why does it have to be so hard? You could be really simple.
Yeah, and there's, of course, we deal with this actually in our world all the time. There's the list of things that you need to pay attention to do something, to make crispy duck or to make beet salad, and then there's a whole other thing, which is having it delivered to your plate and eating it, which is it's a different set of things. And as long as you're very mindful of both, you can probably.
I'd probably make it sound easier than it is, but I think if you ever worked for me or you were a young cook working for me, you wouldn't like it. Because they get creative after a while, they get comfortable, and then they want to do something else. But I'm like, no, not unless, you're paying the rent. But then they do grow, and then they do become sous chefs or chefs. And then when they're at that point, then they get to have that freedom that they wanted 5 years before. It's all, you grow into who you are, I guess.
I mean, not to sound like an old man myself, but I do remember very well working at big global architecture firms when I was starting out my career, and everyone there, every young person said, no, give me more responsibility. I want more responsibility. And then on those rare occasions when a really busy partner would say, okay, all right, George, here, you do this. And you
get like, oh my God, adrenaline rush that you want to do it.
I want to do it, but I have like 900 questions because I'm not actually really probably ready for all the responsibility I think I'm ready for.
Right. But that's a good leader. Then a good leader will give that to you, but know how to fix the problems. Mm-hmm. But as long as you can communicate that you're having the problems.
Right.
Ego, you gotta let it go.
Yes. Now I can sense what the answer to some of these questions are going to be based on evidence thus far. But certainly, one of the things we talk about is visualization, and you've talked about how you can go by before some of these restaurants came into being. You went by the site, you walked by the building, and there was like a vision of what it could be. Mm-hmm. And I wonder, again, as somebody who's more in the visual world, when you're working with designers, I'm sure you look at models and you look at various types of visualizations as you're going through the process?
Oh, no. So the process with them are usually, so I usually find the location. I'll tell them what I want to do. And then they'll say, okay, Kate, what's the food like? What is the feeling? What do you want the customers to feel like? And then what is the wine program? Is there a bar? And then they work with me in the dreaming part. And then, you go through processes where they'll show you carpets and materials, and some work and some don't. And then it was funny because the last part is always the name. It's almost like giving birth. Like you really don't know what's going to come until you have a boy or a girl, and then the name will come. It's like writing a book in a way. So that's how it works. I mean, really, that's how it works. And of course, you do have to go through some of the metrics. Like, okay, if it's 3,000 square feet, comfortably 65 dining times $55 check average, 2 turns, which means you're going to turn it twice in a night. That's like really conservative, but it'll make it. So it'll make just enough. You're not going to make a good profit, but you'll pay the bank, you'll pay the rent, blah, 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 and your staff.
Well, and so from a standpoint of metrics, that's obviously the first and primary one in any business is, are we profitable enough to have any secondary conversations?
Right.
Because if we're not, we just go out of business and it's moot to talk about anything else. But clearly you have other measures that satisfy you about having these different types of restaurants.
I don't make money like other restaurateurs do, so I'm okay with that. I'm not really in it for the money. I'm in it for part of shocking people, maybe not shocking, but doing what I want to do, and I'm pretty happy with it being successful and different. I love working with people. I love being able to create other things. I don't need to be like the rich restaurateur commercial. I want more fulfillment, and I want to create other things. I just don't want restaurants. I'm done. It's almost like I just don't want to do them.
Interesting. Well, that does beg the question. You're not sure what the next thing is then, if it's not restaurants.
No, I'm starting another company, but it's food. It has to do with food, but it's instant nutrition. So it's like boil water, and you have 1 pound of insane, beautiful vegetables boiled in 7.5 minutes, and you could add whatever you want. You could add chicken, you could add stocks. Right now it's vegan, raw, gluten, it's dehydrated, it's healthy. None of the nutrition value leaves. That's going to go everywhere. Vending machines, institutions, and schools, and homes, and everything. So that I want to take globally now, and so that's a new learning process for me.
You know, just to go back to the Steve Jobs example again, this is really so revealing. But you know, during the same time that you've been in your business, of course, the sort of Apple, Microsoft binary world has been going on, and in the first iteration of this class, we read the biography of Steve Jobs, and we had trouble weaving it in regularly to the visitors, so we didn't include it this time. But it's so interesting because in Steve Jobs' case, who created like the most valuable company in the Western world, he did it explicitly not caring about money for like the first 20 years of it. I mean, explicitly designing exactly what he thought would be the coolest thing ever. Whereas Bill Gates thought about it as a profit-loss statement from the very beginning. Now, I'm not saying don't think about money, it's the secret to success, but I think there is a bit of a lesson here about planning your professional and creative life a bit.
Right. So I think it's a good way to look at it. Like, so if being an architect is going to be your life, then don't go in it to make money right away at all. Like, you're young, there's a lot you're going to learn, but it also gives you that opportunity to think out of the box. And it's almost like to prove that I can do it, or to prove that this system works. I think I'm the only person who used to go to IKEA just for the cafe.
Actually, we do that too.
It has a system, and I love the system. And I'm at the point where if I ever did another kitchen, I want to design it completely different than anybody else would ever design it, because I've worked in them for so long.
Right.
Counter space, small places. I'm all induction, and I've always been induction. I'm steam and electric. I'm never gas. So, you know, and these things are for reasons. So now I'm at that point where my team is huge. I have amazing, I know my COO is going to be with me. I'm working on the brand now. So how do I stay successful and also make money where I don't share it with investors, because the 8 restaurants have investors that I'm in with for the rest of my life, or until the restaurants last. So how do I continue to grow my team and make money that's me now investing in my own businesses, or Blink, Barbara Lynch Instant Nutrition Company, or Barbara Lynch Co., where I have a memoir coming out. And, you know, so it's like branding now is going to be so much fun.
Right. That's super interesting. Well, we're going to open it up to the students here in just a second. But I wanted to ask you one more question from our sort of list, and this is a little bit of the oddball one of the words that we use. You know, we use words like question and context and iteration. But the last word on the list is leadership, and I think it's really clear that you have shown the way for a lot of people who are trying to make restaurants, who are trying to, you know, enter that world. How do you
It's so funny because
feel about that?
You read Steve Jobs.
Yeah.
When I opened up restaurants, I was struggling, like, fuck, how do I hate managing people. So I read this book. Tom Riley, he was a basketball coach for LA.
Oh, no, Pat Riley.
Pat Riley.
Right.
And I loved how he like led his team and just was just so active in it, and such like a ball buster, but for his guys. And that such a successful, and I'm not even a sports person, but I just loved like how he did it. It's sort of like how the Patriots, like, you know, Belichick seems like a good guy, a good coach. I don't know much about him, but I did read about Pat Riley, and I'm like, I'm going to lead just like that.
Right.
And treat people the way you want to be treated.
Right.
Dignity is key, and trust, and consistent, and caring, and being, you know, a lot of cooks come in and they need discipline. So discipline is awesome to have.
Right. It's something that I hope is another takeaway from this course. Leadership is not actually, you know, it gets babbled about in business schools, but it's not actually something that we teach as much as we should, I think. In other words, in some ways, of course, I think it's difficult to teach, but in other ways, it's not. Encouraging people, not venting all of your own anxieties on them, but rather really trying to help them be successful and enjoying their success
and
is
enjoy
not
their success
obvious
and
to some
share information with them. Like, we share all our info, our P&Ls, our you know, everything, what makes the restaurants work, so that they know where the finances are, they know where the money goes. And then also, chefs have a hard time sharing recipes or knowledge, and that's just stupid, because you know, that knowledge is power. The more that you teach them, the more challenged you will be. And a lot of chefs are afraid to get that challenge or to be challenged, or they don't think they're ready. You're never going to be ready for challenges, so share. And then always, I don't know, I've always set my expectations so high for me, for my team, for my cooks. I get bummed out when they leave me to go for another restaurant in Boston. Like a young kid who started with me 3 years ago, right out of school, is now leaving Friday to go to work in Chicago at Alinea. Now that makes me happy.
Right.
So, you know, he knew nothing. We've taught him just about as much as he's going to learn here, and now he goes off to this other restaurant that's more in the molecular side. Right. So good for him. Great decision.
Yeah. I want to invite folks to come up and ask questions if you have them. Please.
So my question is, so you started out with one restaurant. You were very involved. It was really your vision. You were completely involved in every aspect of it. As you have gotten more and more restaurants and other institutions, how you say you stay involved in all of them. How has the amount that you've been able to be involved and really be there as like the leader and the person in charge of that restaurant or other shop,
how's that evolved?
How has that changed?
Yeah, it's changed that I'm not on the line every night, which means I'm not in the kitchen every night. It's impossible for me to be in a kitchen now in general. Like, that was really hard for me to accept that. But the more I grew the team, then the less space I had. Like, I couldn't just kick a sous chef off and say, I want to cook tonight. You just don't do that. So I'm involved. Honestly, we have 18 emails a day I have to read. So every chef from each restaurant writes a log, and every front of the house manager writes a log. So I know everything that's going on, and when I'm not traveling, I go by, I check in. I travel with some of my chefs. I just took my chef at number 9 to go to Copenhagen because I was speaking at NOMA. So, that's excitement. And so I'm involved. I know, I can't be at these restaurants every night. I've tried. I've tried to start projects, and then it just doesn't work. Until I get to the point where I can have a chef side by side with me who can do menus for me when another cookbook comes out, or a memoir, or traveling, that this chef, can start all these projects, then I could physically be in a restaurant. Like next week, for instance, I'll be at Monton pretty much all week. And I had to clear everything. And I'm adamant about, don't bother me. I can't fucking have meetings and cook at the same time. I just can't. If I commit my time, then I owe my cooks that. So I want to be there for that. Thanks. Thank you.
Yeah.
Test. What's up?
I like your hat.
Thanks. So my question is, in the past, when you've designed restaurants, what was your thought process on that? Did you think about what the young people wanted to do or eat, what the old people wanted to do or eat, or what you could offer, what a similar restaurant down the street couldn't?
Oh, no, I didn't care about that. What I did was take ideas of when I traveled. So Italy, I wanted, I definitely wanted number 9 to be part of my memory from Italy and part of my experience when I went to Paris. Italy, I was poor, I was awful, but I learned so much. France, it's different. I'm going to 2 Michelin-star restaurants for lunch because it's cheaper, but it was pre-fee, and I was so I had the fine dining part, and then I had the rustic, so I put those 2 together. And I had already gotten acclaimed for making great pasta, but I didn't want to do it anymore. I wanted to learn French. I taught myself. I bought French cookbooks. I got a dictionary. I had to figure it out. But I still had great memories of the food and what it wanted to taste like and what I wanted the service to be like. And it was nothing that I've learned in Boston. So the customers, I didn't care, because you know what? Sometimes the customers are second. It's your team, it's your staff first. Really. Well, it is. It's like cooking together, making sure that they're going to have fun, they're going to be inspired, making sure the servers are going to make money, they're going to love it, and they're going to have consistency because they're your salesperson. The people will come. I'd never actually even put out an ad in a paper. I won't do that either. I hate when I'm writing and you hear on the radio, oh, Chez Henri, that's just, it's a sign they're going down. It's a lot of money to do that.
Yeah.
But
Sure.
good question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please.
Hi. So earlier this week we were talking to Mr. Fisker about cars, and he talked a little bit about how sometimes he has to give up a part of his vision to fit either the engineering side or just for marketing purposes. Have you ever had to give up some of the vision from a business aspect?
Great question.
That's a really great question. I'm sure he's got a larger corporate part, and $1 billion versus $2 million is a big difference. So I haven't had to. I had to change when I first started out, but not much.
Okay.
So the second half, honestly, I had a business partner that I gave a third to, and I got sick, and so I was out for 12 weeks. They were ready to rip out the meat case because they wanted more seats, and I was like, fuck. Get out. It's I'll buy you out, but that's not my vision. It'll work, and you really have to work hard at making that work. So then with the 3 restaurants, my COO was adamant about not changing anything. You know what? If it doesn't work five years down the road and it isn't what's making money, then we can fix it. But I think that he had a lot riding on that. And there are so many ideas that I have, and I do have a team that vets it, but they don't put it away. It's all up there, and then when they start to come down, it's our next 5-year plan. Where are we going in the next 5 years? And so all of that's already been thought out. Before Monton was opened, I'm already done with that. I can already see the servers, I can see the food, and so I'm off to the next thing, and I'm like, shit, now what do I do, So then that's when I started the dehydrating company, because that's what I did at Plum when I closed Plum. That was the only successful part, because I couldn't sell the produce back. I dried it all. And I sold it dried, and it was amazing until the health department came in and yelled at me. And then,
So architecture and food, they do have the regulatory
oh
component.
God, yeah, it's awful. It's like, Miss Lynch, you can't have 5 dehydrators on the floor. And I'm like, oh, why, Tom? Why? Why not? It's like, you need a commissary. And I'm like, oh, okay. So then it just started to lose money. But you try, you try. But that's a good question. No, I would, tunnel vision, stick to your vision. And then you build the people around you to get that built. That's a big thing. I had such tunnel vision, I didn't give a shit who was opening what, where, I didn't care.
Right.
That's not me, I'm not opening that.
Right, right.
I could have opened like 9 burger joints, why would I do that? I hate
Yeah,
that. I like a burger, but once a year.
To be fair, I think it's a great question, and when I think about it, actually, the distinction with Fisker is he is like he's cobbled together like $1 billion plus to try to produce from scratch a car, but not one car, a car that will be scaled to be, he hopes, sell 25,000 units or 50,000 units. It's a different kind of enterprise than a discrete hospitality experience, I think. In other words, I think both of these can coexist.
I will hit that wall. I'm going to come into that because say if I take B&G, and what if I take drink, and I make smaller versions of drink because I get asked to put them in places all the time. And I'm sure if I say yes, and I'm not paying for the bill and the build out, that they're going to have their vision. So that's going to come.
Right.
I can't wait.
Right.
So I can't wait for that.
Thank you.
But it's an experience. It'll be an experience for me. It'll be something new. Thanks.
Hello.
Hi.
So you've talked a lot about your vision, and somehow, like most of the time, it seems it works out, but sometimes it doesn't work. And a lot of times it seems like you kind of learned on the go. What about the business aspect of things? Like, how did it work to kind of jump in without knowing any management or business? Was there any times when that kind of like took a toll?
Yeah. After my 5th or 6th year, I just, the financials, the general manager was running, most of the front of the house stuff. And then I had a business manager who was never around. And it was just always frustrating for me that I didn't understand it. Like I couldn't understand the P&Ls because he would do it a year out, which is way too late. And they also were taking, like, if B&G was really busy and they had a good profit, then they would loan number 9 money. So there was just like stuff going on everywhere. And I'm such a person of clarity. I can't move forward unless there's clarity. And it was unfair to all the other general managers. And then I bought one out. I wish I could get the other one out, but I did let him go, so we don't work together. But I changed the whole way of the budget and the P&L. I taught myself. When I got rid of them, I absolutely started to take over all the companies. So I did manage the companies and cook for 2.5 years, and I wanted to commit suicide. So I was like, okay, it's time to hire somebody. But at least I had a better feeling of what I was doing. And then when I hired this person who's still COO now, president now, oh my God, it was a shit show. The stuff was a mess. I'm surprised if I didn't get rid of them, I wouldn't be here. They weren't collecting money on private events, and it was just like, you couldn't even read it. And I was like, is it me or is it them? And, I didn't know anything, so I couldn't right off say, this is them. I mean, I had an accountant, it was just the formula. They were going by formulas, and I wasn't, and that's where we hit the wall.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, please.
So, or maybe you said a couple times, kind of like fuck the customer, whatever my team says goes, kind of thing. But I know it's really hard when you're designing something to think of something from every aspect where it's going to be used. So I was wondering if you've ever run into anything where the customer comes in and kind of says like, oh, like some sort of feedback that you didn't think about and you kind of had to change on the fly once it's already open, that kind of thing.
Yeah, well, especially with food, if a customer didn't like a dish or
right.
That for sure, I would take that highly into thought.
Right.
One investor was he was in the produce business. I think he started Star Markets, he just thought I was nuts doing plum. I still went forward, and he was right. He was so right. The Sportello, if I have to change the bakery, I mean, I'm losing money. And I shouldn't be. I mean, the busier we get, I just keep on hearing, we need more people to help us get it out. And that's when you underestimate how to make a sandwich, because it sucks. It takes so many people to make 50 sandwiches. You try it. 54 different kinds. It's just stupid. The customers might complain, but I have to always say, well, is the customer fucking opening a restaurant for me? No.
Exactly.
So I don't care. Go somewhere. You know, I care. Believe me, I care a lot. But it's almost like I might like Matisse better than Van Gogh. So I won't go. I won't spend as much time there. I can't live my life like worrying about that. So thank God I don't have to. But thank you.
Thank you.
But you always care about the customer. You just don't go to sleep with them and worry about them.
You talked a lot about how you kind of learned through your experiences, so kind of made mistakes along the way or, you know, happened upon things that worked really well. Are you glad that you learned all of those lessons through experience, or do you think you could have learned some of that through classes?
No, I wouldn't be able to learn through classes. I definitely experienced, definitely the physical part of it, the emotions. It's like theater too, cooks, running restaurants, it's high pressure. You could never get the same feeling out of a book. Plus, I couldn't retain any information anyway out of a book. I just didn't. I just realized I had ADD like 4 years ago. And now I know that I'm not crazy. I just need to do them my way. And so, no, there's like reading a book by hand, and there's like reading a book on iPad, which I like both, but I love the feeling of a good book. So the experience, the adrenaline, the chopping, some kid burning his hand yesterday, or me putting my hand through a meat slicer, you gotta go through all of that. You have to definitely go through all that. You can't go through that on page by page, right?
Or there'll be interesting chapter headings in any case.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Slicing your hand off,
Oh,
chapter 26.
There's a lot.
Yeah,
There's a lot of good
sure.
stuff.
Okay, well, Barbara, I want to thank you very, very much.
Thank you.